So let's talk about Hostiles, which is a movie that I feel like a lot of people have not seen. So I wanted to talk about it and say how good it is because this. I'm not a big fan of westerns already. I'm just gonna point that out. Honestly, like the only I've seen a good amount of westerns, but the only one I've legitimately loved is Hell or High Water, which is a movie that came out only last year, no, 2 years ago now, I guess. But in 2016 that came out, and that's one of the only westerns that I've legitimately truly loved because I feel like westerns to me is a genre that I never have cared for, and I kind of hate myself for not liking it, but I feel like to me it's one of the more slower and uninteresting genres, in my opinion. And a lot of people might disagree, and that's perfectly fine. Love what you love, but this movie, Hostiles, I wanted to talk about it because this is a genre that's not seen much in theaters. Um, every once in a while, but it's not very big. It's not one. It's not a superhero genre. It's not a horror movie. It's not a comedy or a romance. It's a western genre. So I feel like it's cool whenever we see one of these, but I'm glad whenever I actually like it a lot. I really liked Hostiles. I thought that in terms of acting and in terms of like cinematography was good, and in terms of the story I thought was good too. I thought that it was interesting because it's one of those westerns where they're not ever safe. They're always on the run. And I think that as opposed to a western where like say like the Sergio Leone movies where like it's characters kind of building up to this confrontation at the end, which is not as interesting to me. But I like how this is where they're on the run and have to keep escaping from the threats around them in 1892. So I think that it made it interesting, and I thought that the acting was really good. I thought that Christian Bale really held this movie. Honestly, he held it together. He plays this army captain who has to escort a Cherokee to Sacred Land. Is it Wyoming? I think. And I honestly don't. And I'm honestly kind of not as familiar with this time period too. So if I say anything stupid, don't fault me. I just don't. It's not one that I remember that well. But I think it's Wyoming. This like the sacred area they've got to get to, and like it's interesting because it's Christian Bale is this army captain who is basically he's not one of those army captains in this time who is pissed about everybody. He just wants to he wants to retire. He wants to be done with this because he's killed so many Indians. And he says it in the dialogue like I've killed all these people, but it's my job and I don't want to do this. And I really like that. I like that side of an army captain who is forced to do this and is forced to kill all these people, innocent people. Well, not all innocent, but you know what I mean. But I like that it's about him and then Rosamund Pike's character, who you see at the beginning, who is also there with him. I'll keep it spoiler free on her story, but she is also there with him while he goes on this trip. And Christian Bale is really good, and Rosamund Pike is really good, and I think all the other actors are really good too. And I think that the story is interesting because it's where they're kind of on the run and more they're not just building up to this confrontation. Because for me, old westerns are not as interesting because they're slower paced. But I love slow pace in like a horror movie. But like in westerns, the pace to me drags a lot in older westerns. Whenever it just builds up to a confrontation at the end, there may be some action in it or in a scenes or two in between those old movies, but I feel like they're not as interesting in my opinion. But I think that this one is just it's one I wanted to mention because this is usually a genre I don't care for, and I think it's cool that I got another movie that I liked and enjoyed like Hell or High Water last year. I really think that's cool that it's also one of those movies that got pretty good ratings, but nobody talks about it because it's a western. It's not one of the big top tier genres that's in style right now, like genres go in and out of. So it's sad that this is probably not going to get much recognition. Um, And I think it deserves, like, maybe not Oscar worthy nominations, but I think the acting is really good. I think the story is good. I think the pacing is good. And I think the cinematography is pretty good. There's some neat shots. There's really beautiful shots of this area that they're going to. And I think that overall it's something that I know is just going to flop, probably, assumably, or maybe make a decent amount of money, but I don't think it's going to make big numbers. But I enjoyed it, and I think that it's one that I think people should go see. So I'd recommend it. I think people should go out and view this, especially if you're a fan of westerns. And me personally, I'm not a big fan, so that's cool that I got one that I like again, just like Hell or High Water. So I'm really interested to see how this movie goes. I hope it does all right because it does have a lot of good things about it, and it is deservedly one that should be watched. So I really enjoyed it.